Welcome to the Fearlessly Fertile Podcast, episode 316. From 7 years, 7 failed IVFs, 7 miscarriages to pregnant naturally in her 40s, Yasmine's story. Loves, I'm so excited to be here with you this week because we have yet another testimony of triumph from one of my miracle mamas. And these stories are so important because one of the most powerful ways in which we learn is by hearing other people's experiences. See, statistics don't fucking matter, really. Not really. It's truly from other people's experiences that we can gain inspiration to see the truth that success on this journey is possible. Because when you hear Yasmine's story, the cards were stacked against her. She even had a doctor flat out tell her not to try. Can you imagine the hubris? Well, that's actually what happened. And so you're going to hear how Yasmine went from a place of just pretty much being ready to give up to standing firm for her daughter that she even named before she was born. So I hope that you listen to this episode at least 3 times and gather all of the goodness that she has to share. Because look, when you think and take action like a woman who succeeds on this journey, you make time, your diagnosis, the statistics, and your past fucking irrelevant. So here is my conversation with the glorious, beautiful, hilarious Mama Yasmine. We're going to jump right in. Yasmine, can you believe that we're having this conversation?
No, absolutely not. No, absolutely not. I can't.
Well, but I have to ask you to do what you just did a few moments ago because it was so glorious. It was so Mia's mom worthy.
It's pretty crazy.
Woman! Okay, so we have to start this from the top because in addition to asking, can you believe we're here? I also love to ask, how did you even find yourself here? How did you find yourself on this journey? And ultimately, how did we meet? That's how we'll start it.
I was in Bali, like so many Australians on your podcast. I was in Bali and something came up with your fertility program. It just popped up and I said, I'll have a listen to this. And it was pretty immediate. The first time I listened to one of your podcasts, I felt this immediate connection, and I hadn't felt that way about anything I had been doing because I'd been on this journey for 7 years. And I just kind of went I was a bit over it at that point. And you just kind of broke through all this other noise that I had. And I remember sitting there looking at the pool going, this is achievable. I can do this. And my mindset completely changed in the matter of minutes. And then I started getting really hooked and I listened to all of these different women's stories over and over and over again, just all day long while I was in Bali. And then I got home and no, I don't even think I got home. I was in Bali and I applied to the program. And then by the time I got back to Sydney, you had called me and that's when I met you. Yeah.
It's crazy how when the right thing comes around, it just clicks, right? That's across the board. You're an artist. So much of what you do has to be intuitive and, it's that kind of thing. And so you said your journey, you'd been on this journey for 7 years. So share a little bit about that. What were you doing, or did you have a diagnosis? Were there things that were coming up for you that, had you on this journey this long?
No, I had really no symptoms or a diagnosis from any doctor or anything saying that I couldn't. I fell pregnant the first time when I was 37. I met my partner later in life and we got married and just tried and tried and tried. And we had 7 miscarriages over the 7 years. And they were all naturally conceived, not through IVF. And then on top of that, we had the 7 IVF rounds, to which we got a couple of embryos. They didn't really last. And then we had 2 embryos that went on a surrogate journey. So they disappeared to a place in Greece. That was our last sort of hurrah, because I was convinced I could not carry the child. So after 7 miscarriages, I was like, okay, well, I can conceive, but I can't keep it. So obviously there must be something wrong with my, insides. So I said, okay, let's get someone else to carry it. So we looked at surrogacy. We went over to Greece. We met the clinic, started the journey. 2 years later, we got a call from our surrogate lawyer, and he said that the clinic was being shut down. And we all the signs were there. We were just like, okay, this is just not clearly happening for us. Like, we waited 2 years. Let's just give up, essentially. So after we've actually got the embryos back, but it took 2 years to get them back as well, because no one knew where they were. They just kind of were floating around the universe. They've seen more of the world than I have, and they haven't even been born yet.
Okay, wait a minute. Let's back this up, because this is cray. Like kind of when you lay it out like this, I know the story because I know you, but when you hear it again and you say 7 years, 7 miscarriages, 7 IVF cycles, a surrogate situation gone awry, embryos floating out in the universe for 2 years, mom and dad in Australia, embryos in Greece, giant WTF.
Yeah.
Right? You would be so justified in giving up, right? Most people would hear that and run for the hills, right? Most people don't have that. So you're sitting in Bali. You listen to this crazy American that you've never met before shouting into the podcast. What was it in you, though, that was able to kind of crawl out of the rubble of what was your fertility journey and then stand up straight again with the idea that you could do this? There had to have been something in you that stirred, because with your history, like I said, it would have been easy for you to just be like, I'm out.
Yeah, I think I mentioned this to you when we first met. With all of my miscarriage history, when I fall pregnant or I think I'm pregnant, I don't even bother testing because I don't want to get my hopes up. So I just kind of leave it for as long as I can until, I basically get my period. And this time I kind of felt a bit different about it. And I feel like I was pregnant before I even joined the program. What I wanted to join the program for was to keep it. And I never was able to do that over the 7 times that I had fallen pregnant. And so that was one thing. The reason I actually joined was because I knew I needed help to sustain the pregnancy and make sure that it was viable and that it actually ended up in the outcome of having a baby. But before then, I was being interviewed by somebody, and he called me up late at night, and he's like, "Oh, I know it's late, but can I just ask you a couple of questions because it's tomorrow, and I just want to see where your head's at." So he started sort of unraveling the fertility journey that I'd been on, and he'd also had his own struggles. He was gay. He had a surrogate, and he managed to have kids, and so he totally understood sort of where I was at. And he was so sweet and just so loving and was like, "I want to help you. I know I can help you. What can we do?" And I said, "Well, I've applied for this amazing program, and I've actually been listening to this podcast about mindset and things." And as I was saying it, he said something that literally made if I envisioned a light switch, I just imagined clicking it and it going up, the little guy that sticks out of the wall to turn the light on. And it was such a physical response in my brain. I could see this light switch and I turned it on And all of a sudden, I just went, I can totally do this. I can do this. I walked back into the house, and I was standing outside my house at the time, putting garbage in the garbage bin, multitasking and talking to the guy and doing all this stuff. I got back in the house, and my husband was on the couch. And I said, let's go have sex. And he's like, what? And I was like, yeah, I know. It's the time, like, we're doing IVF next month. Let's just give it one run, red hot go. And he's like, oh, I'm really not in the mood. And I was like, oh, but I really feel like it's good time. It's good time. Let's go. Let's do it. And we did it. And the whole time I was doing it, I imagined being very open. You talked about this a lot, about stepping into your feminine and being open and just open to possibility. But also your body, just imagining that being, a field of all of this possibility that you could open up to. And so I imagine that as we were having sex, which is really weird. Then I remember going to the bathroom and sitting down. I think I also told you this once before. This might be too graphic, but usually it just all comes out of me. And this time it didn't. And it was like something had kind of shifted inside of my body and just got, no, I'm gonna savor every last drop of whatever this might be. And then I went to my room, and I don't journal. I'm not a journaler. And I wrote in the book, this journal still to this day only has one page, and the one page says I'm pregnant. And I am pregnant. This time I know I'm pregnant. I just had it. Like, I just had sex. Like, did the deed like 2 minutes ago. There's no way I could have known that. And sure enough, that one time got me pregnant.
Well, and I remember you saying this.
Yeah.
And you've stayed pregnant for the first time in 7 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I remember so many, but probably 3 or 4 occasions where before the 12 weeks was up, I could feel that familiar cramping, that like, it's going to happen. And I would take a hot water bottle and I'd climb into bed and I'd start talking to the baby. And I'd be like, hey, we want you here. Like, you've got to stay. Like, you don't have an option. Please, what can I do to make you stay? And it was this continual conversation because at the time I was reading that great book you recommended, Spirit Babies. And I'd never thought about them as little creatures you sort of signed a contract with in order to be created, essentially. And I started doing that. And I really honestly believe 100% in my heart of hearts that that's what kept the baby there, because I really felt like she was going to go on so many different occasions. And as soon as I started talking to her, the pain would subside and I'd be okay. And then it would happen again and I'd be like, okay, let's have another chat. It's crazy.
Do you remember? Because like, you're such a gangster. Like, I remember, I'm like, hey, Yasmine, it's midnight or plus for Yasmine while we're all in the morning having these calls. But you were so gangster in this program. You always showed up. And then we started calling you and your baby's name. This is Mia's mom. Like, it was just, there was this magic that was starting to happen because it really felt, I love the description that you gave, that a switch was flipped, but you also, it was so clear in the way that you described it. And even when we spoke, you knew what you wanted. You knew what you were coming for. You had made the decision that you were showing up for this and that you were going to do this, not just for yourself, but for this baby and seeing everything through. And you spoke with such clarity about her so consistently. I mean, it's incredible what you created when, and like, think about the transformation that happened for you. I want to hear more about this because I know that everyone listening to this is going to be like leaning in on that part about like, especially when you have a history of miscarriage, when you feel those familiar pains and your move, instead of going panicked, is to go lie down with a warm water bottle and start talking to your daughter. I mean, you knew she was a girl before you could not have possibly, you called it.
I know. It was it was really weird. I knew she was it was a girl, and I knew her name was going to be called Mia before the 12 weeks was up. And I remember that night when we spoke and we had our workshop and all the other ladies started calling their names, their babies' names. And I just remember that night being so incredibly magical that everybody knew who they were going to have, even though, a lot of them weren't pregnant, but I'm sure they are now. Like, I really do. It was just such a beautiful, magical evening. I was so lucky to be part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and how did it feel for you to start calling her in that way? Because I think it takes a lot of courage in the face of that kind of a personal history to say, no, I'm calling her, I'm telling her we want her, it's safe for her to stay.
Yeah, I felt stupid doing it too. I remember going, oh, this isn't going to work. And I was like, why am I doing this? But it was really instinctive. It was almost like I didn't have a choice. It was like, she's there. You've just got to comfort her. And I think some of that supportive reading material you suggested was really, really, really helpful in just eye-opening the whole willing of another being into the planet. I never thought about that. I was like, you have sex, you have a baby. That's it. I know I had to do a lot of soul searching and different, uncovering of things from my past that I needed to deal with, but I never willed her into life until I started listening to your podcast and I started listening to the stories of other women and realizing that it is like this contract that you're signing with this being that is not in existence yet. And you and your partner have to accept that you want a child, you want somebody to come into your life and change everything. And you have to say, yes, I'm ready for you. And I don't think I had ever really been ready up until that point.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, what was it like to say yes to yourself, Yasmine? Because here's the thing. Your husband could have been like, oh, seriously, we're doing this again? Or how many more times are we going to get a kick to the head?
And he did.
Yeah. We'll say more about that because, you had to have said a massive yes to you.
It was me. It was, and I think when we got pregnant, he said, this is all you. I had checked out. I checked out and I just didn't want to tell you. He checked out years ago. And I kind of knew that because the last IVF clinic I'd gone to, my second to last, it basically told me, don't try again. It's not possible. You don't have this thing that makes embryos, so just forget about it. And I remember when I got told that, Tom was actually the one who received the phone call, and I was in a shower. And I just felt like my blood fall from my face. It was inexplicable, the feeling. I was just so devastated and angry. And Tom was like, look, it's fine. We'll look at adoption. And we did. And I wanted a natural child that was both of us. I didn't want to go down an egg donor route either. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I just didn't feel like it was what I wanted to do. So I was like, I did. For a year, we didn't have sex. We didn't try. We didn't talk about it. Nothing. And then my friend who was going through a surrogacy, she'd also had the very similar journey. And she looked at me and she said, when she told me that, she had the baby, I couldn't believe it. My mouth dropped. And she's like, I'm telling you, please do not give up. The minute you give up, it's over. We've got no chance in hell of having the baby. It's gone. She's like, don't give up. No matter how hard it is, keep going. And I just kept listening to her after the year that I'd had. I was like, she's right. And it's not necessary the partner is there with you. I mean, it's great if he is, but it's almost a contract with yourself that you go, I can do this. And then you, on top of that, gave me that confidence of, I'm in my 40s, I'm 43, I can have a baby. Why can't I have a baby? Who the fuck can tell me I can't have a child? Especially a doctor. So I started listening to that, and I was like, that's right. I can do whatever I want. And I am late to the table in most things in my life. Why is this not one of those things as well? You know, I always come late to the table. And so this is like fully what I'm supposed to, this time is when it was supposed to happen, you know? Yeah.
That really, I have to be honest, Yasmine, it just grinds me. The hubris that people speak to us with because of what we look like on paper. Like, can you imagine if you listened to that doctor who told you, don't try again, you don't have what it takes? I mean, we all saw the picture. You got a bump AF on you. Conceived naturally when IVF didn't work. And look at you now. Because you're going to have her in a few weeks, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm 37 weeks and 2 days, and they want to induce me a week early because I'm a geriatric, which, by the way, they should change that term. It is absolutely revolting. And I've had the craziest pregnancy. Again, with my history, I thought it would be really difficult, and it's been so smooth and so amazing. They really need to change that term. It's revolting.
Well, it's not even based in truth anymore. So it's totally disrespectful and it's totally revolting. The connotation is rotten. But they're wrong. It's like, what are you even talking about? Like, especially when you're young and you're healthy as you are, it's like, let this baby ride. She's fine. Like, she's doing great. I mean, that has to have done a lot for you. I think not just as a woman, but as a mother to be, as an artist. I mean, like, all of these things. I mean, think about that. Like, you got this massive nod from the universe that you can trust yourself. Mm-hmm. Like with something as massive as life, Yasmine, like you can trust yourself. I mean, what has that done for you? Like, because your life, in addition to your pregnancy, obviously, and you know, calling in your daughter, like, what do you think some of the ripple effects have been in your own life since this?
I have never been so calm in my whole life. I'm pretty not frantic, but like I'm a busy person. So I think about 1,000 things all at once, and I don't ever really give myself time to reflect or think or really connect, I guess, to moments in life or of my day. And for some reason, and it's been ever since I found out I was pregnant, I have never felt so calm and collected and even. I don't have this crazy in and out, strong surges of crazy emotion. I'm just so much more level-headed. And even my husband was like, can you just stay pregnant the whole time? Because you're like a changed person. It's ridiculous. And maybe it's because, I'm not drinking or whatever, but I just feel like at peace. Like, I feel like this was what I wished I'd never worried before. And that this was what the timing was, the timing. And I should have just, you can't do that when you're in the moment, obviously. But like, I wished I had just trusted myself a little bit more and gone, it's going to happen when it's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Well, and you said something that was really important that I want to go back to, because I think we have a tendency as women who have babies later in life that it's like, you aren't late to the party. And just because other people were having kids in their late 20s and early 30s doesn't mean you're late. And
Yeah.
it's like, how dare you, Yasmine, want to develop your work, or
Yeah.
find the right partner and
Mhm.
have some accomplishments under your belt before as part of the preparation for being in this next stage in your life. I don't think it's late at all. I think it's the new normal.
Yeah, I totally agree. And my husband and I often laugh because had she come earlier, I mean, my husband almost died 2 years ago. Like it was like all of these things happened that wouldn't have if Mia had arrived early. Like some bad shit would have happened when she was around. And I feel like now everything's been cleared and we're just ready. We're just so excited and ecstatic. And I've never seen my husband more happy ever in my whole life.
He's going to be a girl
um,
dad.
I know. And
Wow.
it's just amazing to feel this good and this happy after such a shit journey. And I had a baby shower yesterday with my bump squad. And it was, 6 of us sitting around a table. And it was the most beautiful, delightful afternoon. I was actually supposed to meet somebody at 5 and I totally didn't even look at my phone. Looked at my phone and it was past 5. And I'd been there for 5 hours and I hadn't even thought about looking at my phone. It was just this delightful collection of women who'd also had their own struggles, some of them still going through it. And we were just holding hands and crying and listening to people's stories about you can do this and, don't let anybody tell you otherwise. And it was just fucking amazing. It was such a nice day. And yeah, I was just so lucky. I felt really, 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 really blessed yesterday.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, so let's talk about that for just a moment, because one of the things that I have observed, I observe this not only on my own journey, but in the journeys of so many women, well, that you've gotten to meet and hear about on this podcast. But what do you think this did for your relationship with your spirituality and your faith? Because it had to have blown something wide open. The fact that you knew her before she was, before you could see her on a screen, you knew Mia was Mia, and
Mhm.
all of these things must have opened up for you. So, what do you think?
I've had really, I guess, a tumultuous relationship with faith. I grew up in a really religious household, and so I sort of rejected it for a lot of my life, and it only started sort of reappearing in a more spiritual way later on. And I've always felt really connected, and I kind of feel things a lot more than a lot of people. My grandmother was a lot like that as well, who I'd never met, who I actually feel has been quite significant in my own journey as well. And since I fell pregnant, it has definitely shifted my intensity in belief. And this is a miracle. Like I don't know how else to explain it. Like it's miracles exist to make somebody fall back in love with faith. I really do feel that that's what's kind of happened. And I can't, I still can't believe it's happened. I still can't believe I'm on here talking about the last 37 weeks. Like I can't, I bump into things because I forget that I have this huge protrusion on my stomach. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm pregnant. And it's mind boggling. And the only thing I can put it down to is a reconnection to something bigger than myself, this world, this everything. And I'm so lucky that I got given that opportunity to fall back in love with it. It didn't have to happen to me. It did, but it didn't have to.
That's such a beautiful way of putting it. I've never heard it put exactly that way, but I believe it is so right on, because that's exactly what it is like it's falling in love with the idea of faith and faith in its execution,
Mm.
but at the same time, it's almost, just even picking up on your energy here, it's almost like a homecoming. It's a return to something
Mm-hmm.
you've always known.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And through your whatever circumstance your life brings upon you, it changes your outlook on how you look at faith. It has to. You have bad times, you're like, oh, fuck this. Why should I believe in anything? And then, I don't know, it's why it's a miracle that you even get the miracle. Because why would somebody give you that if you've been so unfaithful? Why
Right.
would you do that? So to be given that opportunity is a miracle in itself. So to have a double whammy, to have the opportunity and then the miracle actually appear, like, that's crazy. So how can you not believe? Like, yeah.
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 How do you think this is going to shape how you parent Mia? Like, do you have a sense of that? Like, have you been thinking much about that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, just that your mind is everything. The way you think, the positivity, what you tell it, what you feed it, what you read, what you watch. You really can do anything you want. You just have to tell yourself you can and will it, and it will happen. Like, there's nothing no one cannot do. I truly, 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 truly believe that. And especially as women, being told their entire lives, you can't be this, you can't do that, you're not strong enough, you're not smart enough, you're not pretty enough, you're not any of these things. That's absolute bullshit. And I can't wait to teach her that the world is your oyster. You go and do whatever you want. You can do whatever you want. You can be whoever you want, as long as you do it with kindness and grace and gratitude. That's all I care about.
I remember Dr. Christian Northrup said to me, gosh, a few years ago now, but she said that the children born to mothers in this time were going to be special and they were going to be unique. There's a unique call on their lives. And I think that as women who have lived a journey like this, I think there is a uniqueness about, like, wow, it really took so much to get them here and understanding the miracle, but it also gave us a chance to grow and become something more as well. Because I think this is also a testament to your own shift in your femininity, to be able to receive. I mean, kind of going back to something you said earlier, but to really be in that softness and be in that receptivity that, we get to change our family tree completely.
And that's so true. Like, I really struggled with the feminine side of me. I think we talked about this, and and you were like, being creative is like the number one thing about being feminine. So you have to be feminine because you're super creative. But I've never felt that way. And since being pregnant with Mia, I have felt more feminine. And maybe obviously because it's such a, female driven situation I find myself in, growing a child. But I really hope that when she comes out, and I already feel that she is this way, she's going to be way more feminine than me. She's going to have that connectivity from the get-go, that softness, that beauty that you attach with the female figure. I know that she's already encompassing because I can feel that.
It's so funny.
And I'll just harness that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's so funny that our kids are exactly like, when I look at Asher now, I was just out with him. He was out climbing trees this afternoon and I was out there. He's like, Mom, come and watch me climb this tree. And I'm like this, the whole time. But he's exactly the boy. It makes perfect sense that he's my son. And I honestly believe that when you really meet Mia, for the first time, face to face, I think it's going to make all kinds of sense. And then as she's growing up, you're going to be like, oh, of course she's my daughter. Of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
It's crazy.
Wow. Well, so Yasmine, so as we close this out and, and we reflect. I mean, you were once a listener and now you're a guest. What are some of the things, in addition to some of the bombs that you've dropped here, but like, what are some of the things that you would want the women listening to really take to heart from your own experience?
I think when I was talking about my lunch yesterday, everybody's way of conceiving was so different. One of my friend's child, she'd already had a baby, and he was, he willed it in. That's what she said. He brought the baby in. He wanted a sibling so bad. He stood in front of her belly and whispered daily, and she honestly believes that's how he came about. And then another friend of mine had she heard something. And I know this sounds crazy. All of this
it's not, girl,
crazy.
You're forgetting what podcast you're listening to. Like, yeah, no, none of this is crazy.
It's about sitting down and listening and making sure that you actually listen intently, because there's signs everywhere telling you that it's going to happen. You're just not really open to it, because at that point you've gone through such a terrible time that you're willing it not to happen. You're saying, no, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Of course it's not going to happen if you're going to say that. The minute you change that mindset, and truly, not just today, I'm feeling better, it's possible. I mean, truly, truly, truly think about it and go, I can do this. You will do it. It's not an option, because you wanted to get that job, you got that job. You wanted to buy that house, you got that house. You wanted to be friends with that person, you were friends with that person. Why is this any different? Why is it any different? Because you don't believe it. Because you've been told your whole life, you can't have this. Why? Would you believe that if somebody said you can't have that house? You can't have that job? You can't have that friend? No. You would try harder every time until you got it. So that would be my take home, is listening to yourself and being kind and saying, you can do this. And it sounds so incredibly easy, but it's the hardest thing I've ever done in my whole life, is have a baby, is conceive and keep this child. It's the hardest thing I've ever done.
And it's unquestionably the thing that's going to propel you even farther in everything else that you do. Because I'm telling you now, Yasmine, everything else is a piece of cake.
That's what I feel like.
It's like that cover of all this other stuff, piece of cake. Piece of cake. You're like, yeah, no problem. Look at my daughter. The rest of it I can handle. Like, I'm ready for it. I mean, and thank you so much, Yasmine, for sharing that. It's such a beautiful thing. And I think this is going to touch so many lives, because we don't hear enough of this. We don't hear enough of the real stories of inspiration, real women, clawing themselves out of a pile of statistics, and women who are very badly behaved and refuse to accept the labels, refuse to be put in a box, refuse to just be cast aside and being told that what they desire is idiotic. Like, thank God for women like you who were courageous enough to buck the system and say, no, like, I'm going to believe for this. I know my daughter's name. I'm calling her every time she might try to go, but you bring her back and you're like, nope, you're going to be born. Your dad and I are ready. So Thank you so much for sharing that, Yasmine. And I just couldn't be more delighted for you and Tom. Like, I just am so thrilled. And yes, thank you for your generosity.
Thank you so much. Like, honestly, you triggered something in me that I thought was very much dead. So thank you so much for what you've brought to the table for myself and my family to be. I can't thank you enough for everything, Roseanne. I really appreciate it.
Well, I received that, and you hug Tom for me, and you let me know when she's born, okay?
I will.
All right, love you, Yasmine.
Mia's mom. See you later.
Loves, wasn't my conversation with Yasmine absolutely fantastic? I hope that you took from all of this that you could have 7 years of quote unquote failure, failed IVF, 7 miscarriages, and still get and stay pregnant naturally at 43 and beyond. It is completely possible, but you have to be the woman who takes a stand for that. So if you want to learn what I taught Yasmine, go to my website, www.frommaybe2baby.com, and apply for an interview there. My methodology clearly has helped women all over the world finally get and stay pregnant, making their mom dreams come true. The results speak for themselves. And look, if you don't have a mindset for success on this journey, you have a gaping hole in your strategy because your mind will give up way before your body ever will. So go to my website, www.frommaybe2baby.com. Until next time, change your mindset, change your results.
Love this episode of the Fearlessly Fertile podcast? Subscribe now and leave an awesome review. Remember, the desire in your heart to be a mom is there because it was meant for you. When it comes to your dreams, keep saying hell yes.